G'day guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Space Engineers. So today what we're going to have a look at is how to fly hydrogen ships. So in the last video we had a look at several designs of hydrogen ships and we had a look at several ships that I had built, and so I thought it was fitting on showing you how to actually fly them. So when you think about hydrogen ships, there's three main things you need to think about. So the first thing being how much fuel it has, how much it weighs, and how many thrusters it has. So this ship has 26 hydrogen tanks, large hydrogen tanks. It has probably 7.3 million kilos worth of thrust, but the ship itself only weighs 3.6 million kilos. So that means that we have plenty of thrust to leave the atmosphere, as it has way more thrust than what it actually weighs. Now, the thing with weight is that weight is something that always changes. So if you land on a planet and you take on a whole heap of cargo, then you need to keep an eye on your weight and make sure that your thrusters can actually lift the ship off the ground. And it's probably more important when you're actually trying to land the ship, because if the ship weighs too much and you don't have enough thrust to keep it in the air, then it's ultimately going to crash onto the ground. So with all that being said, let's jump into the video, and what I'm going to show you first is how to set up your hotbar. So let's go into first person mode, jump into our ship. Lovely, it seems to be raining. Okay, so one of the first things you want to do is set up groups for your thrusters. So because all of the thrusters on this ship to lift it off and out into space are on the bottom of the ship, I've set up a group for the thrusters on the top. I've set up a group for the thrusters at the front, and I've also set up a group for all of the thrusters. And I also recommend setting up a fourth group of the thrusters on the bottom. Right, so basically the reason why you want to group your thrusters, so basically you see in the number 2 position here. So we'll actually exit and demonstrate this. So let's turn off all these waypoints. So if you press number 2, as you can see, all the frontwards thrusters turn off. And then same again when we press number 3, all the top thrusters turn off. Now, the main reason why you want to do this is when your ship is traveling upwards, if you have the top thrusters on, then every time you release the space bar, the top thrusters will fire and will decelerate your ship. So basically what that means is you're going to be wasting a whole heap of fuel fighting those thrusters to get out into the atmosphere. So what you want to do is you want to set a group and you just want to turn them off. Secondly, what you want to do is you want to set up your hotbar with your jump drives. So in the number 4 and 5 position, I've set you can see that I can adjust the distance at which the jump drives will jump. And the way you can do this is go into the G menu. And first what you want to do is you want to create a group for your jump drives. So here you can see that I've already done so. You right click on it and you go increase distance and decrease distance for 4 and 5 respectively. So in the number 6 position, I've got the jump command. Now you can't actually get this command from the group of jump drives. So what you actually have to do is you have to pick an individual jump drive, right click on it, and then you can put the jump command on the hotbar. And then also you might want to put things on the hotbar like the landing gear. And then if we go on to the number 2, you can see I've got my connectors and gravity generators, power, aerials, antennas, lights, and finally the O2 H2 generators. Alright, so I think what we'll do is we'll actually fly the ship now out into space. And what I plan to do is actually take this ship to Mars. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly out into the atmosphere, into space, and we're going to set a waypoint just above planet Earth, and that's going to be handy for when we want to come back. So because what you can do with jump drives is you can actually jump to GPS coordinates, and then I'm going to show you how to actually jump to another planet which you don't already have the coordinates for. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so let's turn all of our engines on. Okay, let's make sure they're all on. Right, let's unlock my landing gears, turn off the top thrusters, let's go. So actually, before we go too far, I'm actually going to on up the O2 H2 generator is already turned off. Now, what you want to do to conserve fuel is you just want to keep tapping the throttle and keep it around about 100 meters per second. But if I hold the throttle down, you can see that I can't go any faster. So if we just hold the spacebar down, that's going to waste a lot of our fuel. So what we want to do is just sit here and keep pulsing. So another thing to look out for when you're doing this is this particular ship has a hangar. So sometimes when you have ships in the front of this ship, it does weird things, like it doesn't always ascend straight. It sometimes, droops downwards, or, because basically the subgrid is pulling down on the ship. So that's one thing you might want to look out for. Okay, so what I'll probably do is I'll just cut the video here, and yeah, we'll see you guys in space. Alright guys, so we've almost reached the edge of Earth's gravity. So I believe it's at about 42 kilometers, so I'm just going to turn the top thrusters on to slow us down a little bit. And sort of glide out of the atmosphere a bit. Cool. Alright, so now we've exited Earth. So now, as I said before, what you want to do is you just want to set yourself a waypoint. So what we're going to do is go into the I menu, GPS, new from current position, just call it something like Earth re-entry. Cool. And we'll move forward a little bit, and as you can see, there's our waypoint. So there's two reasons why you want to do this. Number one, it makes it easier to jump back to the planet, because in the method I'm going to show you next, where you try and jump to a new planet, it's very hard to get the distance right, and you might end up jumping like 50 kilometers from the planet, and you've got to travel, with your engines for ages just to get to the planet. The second reason why it's a good idea to put one of these things down is, say, your base is in a certain position on the planet. What you want to try and do to minimize your fuel consumption is you want to try and drop down right where you want to land the ship. If you're just planning to land it anywhere on the surface, then it doesn't really matter where your GPS marker is. But what I always like to do is I like to just take off from my landing pad that I've built for my ships and go straight up and don't deviate from that, and then put a waypoint the second I get into space. And then when I come back to the planet, I go back to that waypoint, I cut the engines, and I drop down to the planet, and I usually end up very close, within 50 to 100 meters of my landing pad. And the reason why that's, obviously a good idea is because you don't want to land your ship, 400 meters away from where your base is, and then have to traverse across the planet's surface to actually get back to your base, because obviously that's going to waste a lot of fuel. Alright, so there's Mars. Alright, so let's have a look at some jump drives. Okay, whoop, a bit too far. Alright, so what you want to do is just point your ship towards the planet, and obviously we can't jump, so basically I've got my jump drive range set to about well, it looks like 5,300 kilometers. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce it down to something like about 1,700, something like that, because Mars is about 1,700 kilometers from Earth, so, or at least it is in the vanilla game. If you have mods, then that distance could increase. So obviously we try and go 1,800 kilometers and we can't jump. We try and go 1,770 and we can't jump. But if we go 1,725 we can. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get a little bit closer to the planet. So let's try 32.5%, which is 1,752. Let's try and jump. Alright, cool, so we can jump that. Let's try and fine tune it a little bit more. So we'll change that to 32.7. Sounds good. 1,762 kilometers. We can still jump. Let's see if we can't get a little bit closer. What do you reckon? Changes to 32.8. I reckon that's going to be about the sweet spot. Cool, yeah. Alright, so now we're just going to jump towards the planet. Now you saw it before that it wouldn't let me jump. It said that you can't jump into a natural gravity field. So this isn't Stargate, you know, so you can't hyperdrive through the planet. Jump drives can't actually travel through planets. So basically you just want to keep reducing your distance until it allows you to jump, and then try and increase it a little bit more just so you get a little bit closer to the planet. Alright, so with all that said and done, let's jump. Alright, so we've arrived in Mars orbit. So let's make a beeline for the planet. And now this is where some of the thruster groups come into play as well. So obviously you can see that my front thrusters are trying to slow me down. So I'm just going to turn them off. And as you can see, the ship is just moving forward under its own power. So I'm not actually too sure how far away we are from the planet, but I'm going to just cut the video here, and then I'm going to come back when we're within the gravity well, and then I'm going to show you how to actually land the ship properly. Well, it turns out we're actually pretty close to the planet, so what I'm going to do is just back off a little bit. As you can see, I'm already in the gravity well, so let's just turn off our inertial dampener so we can glide backwards a little bit. Alright, cool. Turn it back on, slow down. Alright, so now we're sitting just outside the gravity of Mars. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a GPS marker. And we're just going to call this Mars entry. Cool. Now that we've got our GPS marker set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward a little bit until we get just inside the gravity well. Cool. Alright, so I'm going to let the ship slow down. And then we're just going to tilt the ship upwards because remember, all of the thrusters on this ship that lift it up are sitting on the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to just come straight down like this. So in fact, because we're in creative mode, I might just change the time of day so that we can land in the daylight. So let's just do that. I think that's a little bit better. And the sun isn't in our face anymore. Nice. Alright, cool. So basically there's two ways you can do this. Number one, you can just turn off your inertial dampeners, and as you can see we start falling. But the problem with just turning off your inertial dampeners is your ship can move forward, backwards, side to side, and it can deviate off course. So if you want the ship to be more stable on its approach and follow like a straight line rather than drifting off course, you want to leave your inertial dampeners on. And what I've done is I've set up another thing in the hotbar for another group in the hotbar for the bottom thrusters. And I'm just going to turn them off. So now you can see the same thing is happening. We're falling down to the planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to accelerate downwards just to try and speed up the process. As you can see, like, we've almost landed on this planet and we've only consumed 6% of the fuel on this ship. Alright, so now that we've reached top speed, funnily enough, when you're falling in gravity you can actually reach, I think, about 110 meters per second sometimes, so which is actually faster than what the engines can take you, so it's a little bit interesting. So as I said before, I've got a ship actually in the front of this ship, a little mining ship. So what you'll see is the ship starting to fall down at the front and starting to drift to the left. So yeah, that's another thing you want to keep an eye on. So you basically just want to keep correcting that and just make sure the ship's coming down straight. Alright, so I'm going to just cut the video here and I'm going to fast forward to when we're right near the surface of the planet, and then I'm going to show you how to actually land the ship. Alright guys, now we're getting pretty close to the planet's surface, so I thought it'd be a good idea to show you something else. So basically, obviously you can see that the ship is just falling straight to the planet. So what you don't want to do is let the ship fall to about 500 meters off the ground and then turn your thrusters on, because depending on the ship that you're flying, you're most likely going to crash. So what you want to do is probably at about the 8,000 meter mark is just test your thrusters and just see how quickly the ship stops. So yeah, as you can see, we've got plenty of thrust, so I'm just going to continue falling. In fact, I'm going to accelerate downwards a little bit faster because I want to get down to the planet as fast as possible. Obviously this is probably not the safest way to do it. I'd probably just try and come in nice and easy, especially if your ship's heavy and it takes a long distance to stop. So in fact I will slow down a little bit here. I think I'll probably stop at about 1,000 meters. Oh, actually no, probably about 2,000 meters. Alright. So now we're getting pretty close to the ground, so I'm just going to keep throttling the speed and just come down a little bit slower than what it was before. Just get a shot of those thrusters. And obviously, as you can see, the fuel consumption is really, really good. So, alright, now we're pretty close to the ground. So now what I'm going to do is just turn on all my thrusters and I'm just going to drive the ship down to the surface. I'm not going to let gravity do any work for us. All the inertial dampeners are turned on. I'm just going to find a semi-decent landing spot here and then park the ship. So let's let it drift a little bit. Alright, we're going to miss that stone. Just take it nice and slow. And this is obviously where it helps having a ship with a fair bit of fuel left over, because you can kind of take your time a bit with the landing. And alright, so I think all of the landing gears are on the ground now. So now we're just going to lock the ship and turn off all the thrusters. Cool. And now we're in Mars. And how much fuel did we use? 10%. Right, cool. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope it was helpful for you guys. Definitely consider liking and subscribing. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Cheers, and thanks for watching.